Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's Friday with Irina show. Today's theme is grit, or making something out of nothing. In this show today, I will show one of my games which I played last year versus a grandmaster from Russia. Alexander Predke, rated 2611. The game was played in an open tournament in Vietnam, and I think there are some interesting things to be learned from it. Hello Don Mike, welcome to the stream. Let's start. In the game I played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. It was the first moment when I already had a choice of what to do, which opening to choose, the Ruy Lopez with after bishop b5, or the Giuco Piano, or so-called Italian after bishop c4. Being a game from a double round and being played in the afternoon after a long game, I chose something which I felt was more safe and simple, and I played bishop c4, going for the Giuco Piano variation. Knight f6, d3, bishop c5, c3, a6, short castle, d6, a4. Well, this a4 move is quite popular nowadays. If before white was going more for the plan with knight d2, bishop b3, h3, rook e1, knight f1 immediately, now a4 is the most popular move. Bishop a7 followed, rook e1, short castle, h3. Well, not allowing black to have this knight g4 or bishop g4 move. h3 is quite useful in this position, and black has two plans here. One connected with playing knight e7 and bringing the knight to the king side with knight g6, let's say knight d2, knight g6, knight f1, and c6, trying to make d5 happen, bishop b3, d5, and well, it's a well-known theoretical position where the fight just begins. So it was that alternative plan to what my opponent chose. He played bishop e6 here, knight bd2 followed, h6. Well, that is the main line. Indeed, Don Mike, quite a cautious variation. Bishop takes e6 now. F takes e6. Black's pawns in the center are doubled, but on the other hand, it is not that dangerous, because for white it is difficult to come up with something against this pawn structure. For example, if we manage to play at some point d4, then black will just take and play e5 or d5, and he will be just absolutely happy. So we should find another plan. It is obvious that white is not the one to play on the king side, because the f file is opened for black only, and it's black's area of play. And that's how we come to the conclusion that white should be playing on the queen side. The first move I did was already a little bit inaccurate. The best was to play b4, and the idea is that we are not allowing black to play a5, stopping our play on the queen side, and in the same time we slowly prepare knight c4 and b5 at some point. Well, here there were many games played. The main move is knight h5, and then this curious move introduced by the world champion Anand, rook a2 follows, knight f4, knight c4, and now the pawn on f2 is extra defended, and white is simply a little bit better. Also b5 will be a threat now, because after a takes b5, a takes b5, bishop takes f2 is no longer possible because of rook takes f2, and that's one of the main ideas of this rook a2 move. Instead of b5, I started with knight c4, and I'm curious if you were paying attention to what I was saying, and if you'll be able to find black's best move in this position. So I'll give you a little bit time to think on the position and make some suggestions. Let's see. I was expected a straight answer, but well, let me say then, the main problem of this move is that black can play now a5, and the problem is that now b4 is no longer possible, and white found itself in a position where it's unclear where to play. The king side is black's, as I said, because the f file is open for him. The center, well, it is not really what we want to do to open up the center, because we will undouble black's pawns. And now on the queen side, it's also not clear how to proceed. So I realized my mistake, and I chose to play bishop e3, exchanging this bishop and eliminating the pressure of the f2 pawn. Black had to take, bishop takes e3, and now I had a big choice, as all the captures on e3 are possible. If I would play f takes e3, that would be just a symmetrical pawn structure, and the position is equal here. But somehow I felt that I could try something more interesting. Rook e3 was one of the moves I considered, and I wanted to play it, but then I did not like this knight d7 move, and after d4 queen f6 follows. And again, even though white is maybe a bit more active because of the control in the center, it was unclear what I got out of it, because d takes e5, knight e5, and everything exchanges, and well, it seemed to me that the pressure on the f file is a bit unpleasant. That's why I chose to play knight takes e3, and here I expected black to launch a kingside attack slowly by playing something like knight h5, and I wanted to go back on c4, queen f6, rook e3, and now d4 will come better than in the other position, because the knight isn't on d7 but is on h5, and it's not defending the pawn on e5. Knight f4, let's say, then queen f1. Some cautiousness is needed, and after g5, rook d1, and d4 is coming. The position would have been really complicated here, and that's what I expected. But in the game, my opponent chose to make use of the fact that the knight is no longer on c4, and it's not attacking the e5 pawn. So he played d5 here. Now it is again white to make a decision, because, well, of course, I wouldn't want to undouble black's pawns, but on the other hand, d takes e4 might already be a threat, and also d4 is a possibility. In the game, I decided to take on d5, e takes d5, and play d4, trying to decide, to make black decide the structure. It was another possibility to play queen b3, but it is somewhat of an unnatural move. Actually, the engine suggests it, and it is very happy here that it claims that white is better, but for a human being it's not really clear why, because after queen d6, black is more active, it controls, black controls the center. I tried to look how the engine continues the game, and the answer is quite simple. It just doubles the rooks on the e file, rook e1, and tries to provoke a weakness here. But well, I think it was a bit unrealistic to find this move. So d4 was quite natural. Black played e4. Now if I play knight d2, then the attack on the king side will be really unpleasant, and my idea here was to play knight e5. The point is that knight takes e5 is not possible, because now the pawn on d5 will be hanging. So black has to do something different. He played queen d6. And here was another important moment of the game, how to continue. Probably the best would be to take on c6, and if b takes c6, then just c4, with equal chances. In the game, I liked another move better. Hello, Jan Van Chess. Welcome to tonight's show. After queen d6, I played knight f5. Well, what was beneath me making this move was the fact that after knight c6 in this position, I thought that queen c6 was a possibility, and I did not like it. And that's why I chose to play knight f5 first, because after queen e6, knight takes c6. Now black cannot capture any of the knights with the queen, because a fork on e7 would happen. And I somehow forced him to take with the pawn on c6. And this is the second time black doubles his pawns. B takes c6 followed indeed. Knight e3 now. The plan is to either play c4 or to go knight g4 and exchange this knight. The exchanges are favorable for white, because otherwise some attack on our king might happen. My opponent played queen d6 here, preparing c5, and c4 followed. Now d takes c4 isn't a good option, because after knight c4, suddenly all black's pawns will be weak, and white would just be much better. So after c4, he played rook a to b8, attacking the pawn on b2, b3 followed, and knight h7. Quite a natural move. Black's plan is clear. He wants to play knight g5, and then knight f3, or maybe even rook f3, double on the f file, and deliver a mate to white's king. I continued with rook c1 here, trying to prepare something on the c file, and knight g5 followed. And here is one of the critical moments of the game. I remember taking a lot of time here, and with every minute passing, I was disliking my position more and more, even though it seemed to me like I did absolutely nothing wrong. All my pieces are centrally placed, my pawn structure is healthy. Somehow it is really unpleasant for white to face all these threats against his king. And with the time trouble coming, I had a very uneasy choice. Let's see what moves you consider as candidate moves here in this position. I'm quite curious, because I remember in the game I did not like any moves, and until I found the one which I finally liked. Let's see if anyone has any suggestions in this position. White should probably either find some defensive move against this knight f3, or to find some counter-attacking chances. Well, c5 isn't really a good move, because we are closing up that flank there, and then the attack will be even more dangerous. Our only chance will be at some point to take on d5 and try to make use of that open c file. So c5 probably isn't the move we're looking for. Let's try to find something else. Well, let me tell you the moves which I considered during the game as candidate. Well, one of them was queen c2. It is quite logical, threatening to take on d5 and then on c7, but I did not like it because of queen g6. And now knight h3 is a threat, knight f3 is another threat, and the position is just better for black. So now we probably see very well also why the move c5 wasn't good, because also queen g6 would follow and we wouldn't even have this c takes d5 idea in any variations. Another move which I considered was rook e2, preparing to take on d5 and then play rook c2. So you see that all the counterplay which I found for myself was to try to make use of the c file. And here I saw that after knight f3, g takes f3, e takes f3, rook d2, there is no mate coming, because the knight on e3 defends the king quite well. Let's say rook b8, then queen f1. And we also defend the pawn on h3, the king has quite a safe place on h1, and we have our threats. Let's say rook e4, then we take on d5 and play rook dc2. Now on c7 it's hanging, rook c6 might also be unpleasant. So I thought this rook e2 move was a good one, but then I noticed that black can play rook f3 here, which is a very, very unexpected very unexpected resource for black. The point is simple. If g takes f3, then knight takes f3, and a mate is coming, because after king f1, queen h2, well, I'm not sure how white will be able to defend. Also, after g takes f3, e takes f3 is also a possibility. So I did not like this rook f3 at all. And well, here after c takes d5, also rook b to f8 is coming, and now rook h3, knight h3, well, too many threats. So I had to rule out this rook e2 move, and I was not sure what can I do in the position. Thank you guys for following. Hello Angus f2. Knight g4 is a possibility indeed. Let's see if it works out. It could be. The problem is that after, let's say, h5, knight e5, queen f6, well, now it's hanging on f2. We should do something about it. Probably, I don't know, queen e2 maybe? Now knight d7 is a threat as well for... but probably here it doesn't work out because of knight f3. G takes f3, e takes f3, and when the queen... but we have queen e3. Well, what an interesting position. Well, probably knight f3 is not working then, so after queen e2, black would have to play something like rook d8, defending the d7 square, so that there would be no fork. But I indeed like this knight g4 move. I don't know, maybe it could work. Let's think of it a little bit more. Maybe queen f4 is better here. Not letting the knight go to e5, because the pawn on f2 will be hanging. And here after queen e2, let's say, how to continue? Queen e2, rook b3, and it's just a really bad position because now for sure some sacrifice will come on h3. So queen e2 is not a possibility. Rook c2, also rook b3, so probably the only move is rook e2, but I cannot believe that that this works out. Probably knight f3 may be decisive, either immediately or after h5. So yes, knight g4 was a good candidate move to consider, but unfortunately it doesn't solve our problems. And the correct move is a different one, and it took me a lot of time to realize that that it's the best chance white has. The correct move is queen h5 here, and the idea is quite simple. Bringing the queen on h5 defends the pawn on h3 one extra time, so now after knight h3 we'll always have queen h3, and in the same time we defend against those threats linked with queen g6. Also, the knight will be unable to go from g5 because the pawn on d5 will be hanging. And black will have to do something else, because now the attack doesn't go so well. You might wonder what is happening with that loose pawn on b3. Can he take it? Actually, he did take it, but let us look first at another variation at knight e6. This was the best move in the position. The point is that after c takes d5, knight f4 is happening, a little intermediate move. And now after queen g4, c takes d5. Knight f5, let's say, rook f5, queen f5, knight d3. Black is just better here because, the pawn on b3 will be falling, and even though white has some compensation, it is definitely not enough for equality. So that was the best move for black, knight e6. Instead, he took on b3. And that was exactly what I thought would happen, because it's too tempting to take this pawn. Who wouldn't? I think I would take it by myself as well. My point here was that I can take on d5, c takes d5, and play h4. And now the pawn on d5, we see that it's a tactical weakness. The knight has to go away, and then that pawn will be lost. Knight e6. Perhaps my opponent was happy about threatening the pawn on d4, and he didn't see quite an interesting idea for me. Knight takes d5. Now the problem is that black would love to play c6 here, making the knight go away and in the same time protecting the c pawn, but here rook takes c6 would happen. And a little trouble for the queen. Queen takes c6 is not possible because of this nice fork on e7. Probably going for the position starting here, he did not notice this idea. Otherwise, he probably would have tried playing knight e6 immediately. And here, after knight d5, he chose to take on d4. Which is quite logical, but then it gives away the pawn on c7. And now it is the second critical moment of the game. How should white continue here? Should we take the pawn on c7, or should we take the pawn on e4? Or maybe you can find another move. What is the best way for white to continue the game? And don't forget that sometimes rook f5 might also be a threat. Or g6, and then the knight on d5 will be hanging. So have this in mind. I remember that when he went for this position, I was already liking it a little bit more than a few moves ago, because now, well, we were both quite low on time, probably like 10 minutes each, and the position started to look double-edged. At least it wasn't like before, when black would just attack our king and we would have to play very precisely not to lose immediately. Here both players have a chance to go wrong. So I was quite happy about this, and I chose to play here. I see no suggestions in the chat, so I will just show the move. It is rook takes e4. I chose to go for this pawn because, quite logically, a central pawn is more important than one which is not in the center. So that was one reason, and another one is to attack the knight on d4, and that makes our move to be with a tempi, so black doesn't have time to make all those threats of his come true, like g6 or rook f5. He has to do something about the knight. And here it was time for my opponent to go wrong. Let's see. Will anyone find the best move for black? Actually, it's quite interesting that there is only one move for black, which is maintaining the balance. All the other moves are getting black in much trouble. Let's see if anyone can find it. I'm quite curious. In the game, I did not consider the correct move because it's a little bit unnatural, and it's interesting that if we manage to lure our opponents in this type of positions where the most natural move isn't good, then it doesn't matter how strong your opponent is. Playing natural moves, it's what is in our blood, and it is very difficult to go against it. So that was quite an achievement. I was quite happy about it during the game, and I felt like I'm no longer in danger of losing this game. Let's see. Anyone seeing the correct way to defend for black? It's a tough one indeed. In the game, my opponent played knight f5, and even though it looks very logical, the knight on d5 is hanging. In the same time, he defended very well the knight on f5. It looks very logical, but then I will let you think why this is not correct. But the only good move for black was to play rook d3 and defend the knight like this. Now after knight e7, black would just go king h7, and it's not dangerous. Nothing really happens here. And even though everything is equal, the position stays really complicated. After rook d3, I don't know if I have some better options here, but it seems that the position is quite balanced. Instead, he played knight f5, and now it is the third critical moment of the game. I remember that the move which I made came to my mind very quickly, but it was only because I solved a lot of chess puzzles, and I seemed to remember this little pattern. Yeah, hi Sperry. Knight f5 was your first guess too. Yes, it is the most natural move in the position, and looks like it's working out. Let's see now if you will find the best way for white to continue the game. Don't forget that we were both now really low on time, probably less than 5 minutes if I remember correctly, and it made it even more difficult for both sides to play correctly. So how would you continue? And what would also be your candidate moves? The knight on d5 is hanging, so probably the candidate moves should be connecting to doing something about that knight. I guess knight c7 would be a possibility, and quite a good one, because then knight e6 is a threat. But then there is the possibility for black to play rook b4, exchange some pieces. Now rook takes b4, just a takes b4, and the position would probably just end with equality. What other moves do you see here? I don't see any suggestions in the chat. Come on, make your brain sweat a little bit. Queen takes f5. Oh wow, interesting. But what is the idea? Queen takes f5, rook takes f5. Knight e7 probably. But then king h7, knight takes f5, and white doesn't have enough material for the sacrificed queen, I think. No, this queen takes f5 doesn't work out. It's a quiet move, one which creates a lot of threats, and in the same time it does something about that knight hanging on d5. Yeah, rook c6 is a possibility, but it does not work because of queen d5, so that's not the move, but it's a move with the rook. So I will give you a small hint. A rook move. There are not many left. Rook d1. Very well, Sperry. It is a candidate, but it also is a move after which the engine gives the evaluation of +4. As incredible as it might sound, this is simply a winning move. There are simply too many threats created in the position, and it is very difficult for black to find a defense. Now knight e7 is a threat, and then black would lose the queen. And all the other knight moves are also a threat. Knight e3 might be a threat, and then the knight on f5 will be in trouble. What can black do? Probably king h7 is the most natural move, going away from all those checks. King h8 wouldn't work because of knight f4, and then knight g6 is coming. So he played king h7. And now let's see, how should white continue? Where is that +4 advantage? After which move? Because being in time trouble, I failed to find it. Let's see if any of you will manage to find the right move here. The position is as complicated as it can only get. Knight e3. Knight e3 is a possibility, and of course the knight moves are the first to be considered in this position. But unfortunately, the problem was, I also thought that this move is winning, but then I noticed that he had rook d3, and the problem is that rook d1 comes with a check after knight takes f5, while if I take on d3, then queen d3, and the rook on e4 is hanging. So I have no time to take on f5. That was the problem of knight e3. So what else? Knight e7 is a big candidate indeed, and it is the move which I chose. And unfortunately, I gave away quite much of my advantage after making this. But the correct move was a different knight move. Well, there are not many remaining. Knight f4 was the correct move, and the idea behind it is very simple. Now when black goes away with the queen, doesn't matter where, let's say queen c6, then knight e6 is happening. And queen e4 is not possible because of knight g5, and in the same time knight g5 is a very unpleasant threat. Let's say the rook from f8 would go to b8. It's not possible to go to b8 because the knight on f5 is hanging, and if he goes, let's say, rook f6, then just knight g5, king g8, and after rook d8 it will be a mate, because after rook f8 we have queen f7, or rook takes f8 and queen f7. Anyway, this was the idea, to reroute this knight to a better square, because on d5 it's centralized but it does not do much good. So knight f4, all forced. Now queen f6 was probably the best defensive move, but then again knight e6, and well, at least now he has rook b8 as a possibility, but after knight g5 check, king g8, rook e8, take, queen f8. After rook d8, it's just mate. There is no way for black to defend here. So knight f4 would have probably guaranteed me a win, but unfortunately I did not find it here. Where do you mean queen e4? After queen c6 probably. There was knight g5 there. After queen e4 is not possible because of knight g5, and it's a fork. And we're winning the queen. So unfortunately, black could not go for it as well. Hello, Drunken Valley, welcome to the stream. Yeah, even knight f8 is good enough, but knight g5 is just winning on the spot. Unfortunately, I did not spot this move, and I went for this knight e7, the natural way for white to continue. It is quite interesting to observe how both white and black in this game made mistakes simply by doing the most natural move. So rook takes b3 was the most natural, it was a mistake. Knight f5, again, the most natural, a mistake. Knight e7, the first move which probably comes to mind, again a mistake. So sometimes you can try to exploit this fact, because you see everyone is tempted to make the first move and the most natural one. And if you prepare a little trap, then, well, that might be it. Here the game continued with queen f6, and now I realized that that wasn't the best move, but at least I was happy here that I'm not in danger of losing the game anymore. And I thought a draw should be a good result, so I played queen takes f5, queen takes f5, knight f5, rook f5, liquidating to a rook endgame with everything equal. I remember that here, after playing rook f5, my opponent offered me a draw, and actually, when going to this endgame, I thought that a draw should be a good result, and why not? Probably a draw will happen. But then when my opponent offered me that draw, I asked myself, why did he do that? I mean, usually grandmasters or high-rated players, when they feel there is still at least a tiny little chance of them playing for a win, they never offer a draw. So usually that draw offers come only when the stronger player is much worse, and sometimes even being much worse is not a reason enough to offer a draw. The problem is when you see, let's say, that there's absolutely no chance of winning and your opponent is playing for 2 results, then the higher rated one is usually offering a draw. So that sounded suspicious for me, this draw offer, and I started looking a bit deeper into the position. And then I realized that black should actually be really accurate in this position to make a draw, because the problem is that after rook d7, rook e7 is a threat, I mean the other rook, rook e to e7, and then black will be in trouble with this hanging pawn on g7, also the pawn on c7 is hanging, so it is not really easy for black to defend this position. So I declined the draw, and I thought that okay, there will be time for me to make it anyway. There were 7 more moves until the time control, so we were really low on time, playing only on this 30-second increment, and that's what made me still hope that maybe my opponent can go wrong. After rook d7, rook b1 followed, king h2, and rook b4. Now, of course, if we exchange one rook, even though we're taking, anyway, we're not even winning the pawn, because after rook a5, the pawn on a4 is falling, and it's a completely equal rook endgame, just theoretically drawn. So after rook b4, it's not the move for white. Instead, the best try is to play rook e to e7, giving up the pawn on h4, but in the same time attacking on g7, and maybe creating a little bit of a mating net against black's king. And here my opponent went wrong, but he made again the most natural move. So yeah, maybe that should have been the theme of tonight's show, natural moves. Because actually all the natural moves, as I said in this game, were mistakes for both sides. So it's probably not even worth asking you, because the most natural move is of course rook g4, defending the pawn on g7 and somehow assuring that all is fine there. Because, well, rook h4 is another candidate move, but one sees immediately that after king g3, rook g4 is no longer a possibility, and when black takes on a4, rook takes g7, king h8, rook takes c7, it is not easy to evaluate this position, because black's king is really bad, and if white manages to create some threats, well, black might be in trouble. But it was the best way for black to continue, because here he has a move like rook c4. The point is that it's not possible to take it because on g7 is hanging, and no matter where we're going, black's rook is following us, and in event of, let's say, rook a7, then just a4, and that a pawn creates just enough counterplay for black. Anyway, it would have been probably unpleasant for my opponent to defend it, but my guess is that if he would spot this rook c4 move in the end, he would go for it. Instead, he played rook g4. And now it is another critical moment of the position. How should white continue here? Let's see. How to face black with the most problems, I mean. How to create a position where it is really unpleasant for him to play. How should white continue? Rook c7 is probably a possibility, but unfortunately it even loses, because after rook f2 it is our king which is in trouble now. So beware of that pawn on f2 hanging. f3. Very well, Jan van Chess. f3 is indeed the move. The point is that rook h4 is again not possible. Well, not possible. it looks not possible, but actually it was the only move in the position for black not to lose. Now after king g3, rook takes f4, rook g7, it's just another variation of that position we saw before. Now rook c5, and again it's this ugly looking position, but one which black can still save. Instead, after f3, black again went wrong by doing the most natural move, which is rook g6. And here, well, rook takes c7 followed, very natural, and rook f4. And now it is the last critical moment of the game. Nelia Maklakova very well spotted f3. Hello Peter Balkus, welcome to the stream. I'm glad you like the channel, and I hope everyone is enjoying tonight's game and tonight's theme, which might have been also how to go wrong with making the most natural moves. Alright, so I hope that while talking you had a chance to think of the best way for white to continue. As you've probably spotted by now, it's double attack. Black threatens both pawns on h4 and a4. So white should try do something about it. Let's see if anyone has suggestions. Hi Peter, unfortunately king g3 is not possible because the rook on g6 is defending the g line. If you meant g3, then rook f3 would have been the refutation. So it's not anything connected with g3. No worries, it happens to all of us. Let's see if there are any other suggestions. What are white's candidate moves here? Think of it and find the best one. g4 to play for h5 and the rook So Angus f2, you've got the idea, you've spotted it, but you did not choose the best way to make it happen. The idea is indeed something connected with back rank mate, but g4 is not the way, because after rook f3, h5, rook takes g4, it's actually white who will be losing, because the pawn on h5 will be impossible to be defended. Let's say rook e8, just rook f5, king h3, rook f4. And white lost all the pawns while trying to mate black. So the idea behind it is correct, but you should try to do it in a different way so that that pawn on h5 won't be falling. Let's see another suggestions. Jan Van Chess, you found the move which I made in the game, rook e4. It is the safest way for white to continue, and white is actually keeping a pawn up, but unfortunately, as it turned out, the end game after rook takes e4 is drawn, but it was one of the possibilities. Let's see what other suggestions we have in the position. h5. Well, h5 is a possibility, but the problem is that after rook h4 check, king g1, rook takes h5, we are losing this pawn, and again, all these threats are not working. Instead, I saw in the chat that Nelia Maklakova found the move, the best move in the position, and it is king h3. Very well spotted, Nelia. It is indeed the best move. We are defending the pawn on h4, and in the same time after rook a4 the threat is to play h5, and now if rook g5 then just g4, rook a3, king g3. And the problem is that black has no way to defend against rook c8, rook e8, and then a mate on h8 is coming. Or if not a mate, then well, even g6 will not be possible, because a mate on the 7th rank will appear then. So that was indeed the idea, and somehow it doesn't come to mind I remember that for me, when I checked the game, it was really unexpected, because sometimes one forgets that even in the end games it is possible to play for a mate rather than for the material. If after king h3 black would have tried to play h5, it would be met with rook c5, double attack, and now after rook a4, a really important move, rook a7. Not hurrying to take that pawn on h5, because black cannot really defend it. After, let's say, king h6, rook a8 would happen. Now rook h8 is a threat, and when the king will go back to h7, we'll first take to on h5 and then on a5, and we'll have just enough material to win the game. Yes, indeed, it was a classical game, but we were in time trouble here, as we did not reach move 30 yet. It was move 38, and playing just on the increment on that 30 seconds, I somehow failed to find this move. So yeah, king h3, the last the last moment when I could win the game here. Instead, I went for rook e4, as Jan van Chess also thought that it was the move. Rook takes e4 followed, f takes, rook g4, and here my idea was that I have this nice move rook e7, and after rook h4, king g3, black will be losing the pawn on a5. So rook h1, let's say, won't be possible because of rook e5, or maybe even it's better to play rook a7. No, rook e7 I don't like because of rook e1. Yes, probably rook e5. And now the pawn on a5 falls, because the king will be able to defend the pawn on e4 very well after rook e1. King f2. And when the rook goes, we take on a5 anyway. And, well, this endgame should be won for white. Instead, he played rook h5, which is the only move to make a draw. King f4 followed. Now the threat is to play rook e5, rook h4 check, king f3, and rook h5 again. And there is no way, unfortunately, for white to win that pawn on e5, because after rook b7, let's say, rook b5 isn't even a threat, because both pawns will queen in the same time. Let's say rook c5, rook b5, rook b5 take, and a4, and it will be a draw. So I repeated the position once again, played king f4, rook h4, and tried to play g4 here. So that this rook h5 move is no longer possible. Hello Danesh, welcome to the stream. A little bit late, but better late than miss it at all. h5 followed, king g5, rook takes g4, king takes h5, rook g1, rook e5. And I thought that maybe I still have some chances in this position, as if black would play rook e1, then king g5, and the king is coming towards the pawn on e4, and when I secure it, then I will be able to take on a5. But instead, after rook e5, he played g6, and the problem is that after king h4, king h6, rook a5, he finally gave up that pawn, but unfortunately it's not enough for white to win. King h3, king h5. I tried to play rook a8, rook e1, rook h8 check, king g6, rook g8, king h5. And now there is no way for me to win this endgame, because after rook e8, even rook e3 might happen, and it's unclear who should be making the draw. Well, of course it is still a draw. Black at least has rook a3, and after rook a8, rook e3 back. Easy draw for both sides. Yeah, I guess that would be it. What would be the conclusions of this game? Well, the first one is one about believing in yourself and in your calculation, no matter how strong your opponent is. We are all human and we all make mistakes, no matter of what rating we have. And it is actually something which young players forget many times when playing against grandmasters. They respect them too much and they trust their opponent's calculations. So there is no reason not to check yourself if you have time, if your opponent calculated correctly. As I said, we're all humans, all of us make mistakes. Another conclusion is that in time trouble, it is good to find unusual moves. Such moves which your opponent will not be expecting. And also try to make a plan and play series of moves rather than think after each move you make. Well, that's just from a strategical point of view how to play and how to handle the time troubles. Perry is saying that your conclusion is that white had more fun than black. Well, until some point after the opening, I did not have any fun at all. Hello, Frappuccino, welcome to the stream. Yeah, black had to suffer a bit, but actually when the game started, let me put the position before the first critical moment. It was somewhere about here. Here. How do you think this position is? Well, to me it did not look fun at all, and it looked like I would be the one who would suffer. So yeah, let's go back to making those conclusions. Well, another one is that no matter how bad you think your position is, just hang on there and try to continue the fight. Finding moves which don't lose immediately can make your opponent impatient. And actually after knight g5, my first assessment was that my position is just, well, if not lost, then just really bad, because I thought knight f3, everything is just coming, and I saw absolutely no way for me to continue the game. I remember that it took me a lot of time, maybe like 20 minutes here, to find the correct move, which was queen h5. And maybe even if the engine doesn't give it as the first move, it says that rook c3 is the best continuation for white. But come on, after knight e6, white will be suffering here for very long and indefinite time, and black has just a very simple play here, just attacking the king. So sometimes the best move which the engine suggests is not it's not the best move in real chess. And that's why I think queen h5 was a very good move, because it defended basically my king, and in the same time it assured me with some counterplay. So yes, that's another conclusion, that you should hang on there and try finding the moves which pose your opponent most of the problems. Another important conclusion is about the draw offers. When a stronger opponent offers you a draw, it is in 99 cases out of 100 only because he thinks his position is much worse and has no chances to win whatsoever. So that might ring a bell to you when this draw offer from a higher rated opponent comes. And you have two choices. If you feel tired, or if you are really happy about the draw and that's all you need in that game to, I don't know, to score a norm or to win a prize, then don't think and just take the draw offer. The biggest mistake you can make in this case is to think, should I take the draw? Or maybe I shouldn't. And then you just lose time, lose confidence, and even if you decide in the end that you want to continue the game, you've spent so much time on thinking if to accept the draw or not, rather than calculating the variations, that you might just go wrong and even lose the game. It happened to me not once, not only once, yes. So either accept the draw or forget about it immediately and just continue the game. Well, and the next and the last conclusion is about the mating net, which is a pattern that can be used in endgames as well. So I'm talking about that moment when I could have played king h3 here. Connecting with the idea of playing h5, g4. Actually, I saw this idea to play h5, g4, but being really low on time, I didn't notice that I can play rook e8, rook c8, and g6 won't be saving black because the rook will return back to the 7th rank and it would be a mate. So remember that even in endgames, the mating net can be a pattern. And I think that would be all my conclusions for today. Let's read what you're saying also in the chat. Another perspective on a draw offer from a high-rated player. You could ask yourself if you enjoy playing against strong players. That in itself could be a reason to decline a draw. Well, indeed, that is the recommendation which I give to everyone who asks me about this, and that's what I tried to do myself. But sometimes it is really tempting, you know, to make a good result and let's say to make a draw versus a 2650 rated player. But indeed, if you want to progress, then the best way is to continue the game and with this to learn more from your opponent. So that's my approach as well. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to be also materialistic and think, okay, I can accept the draw, assure myself a good price, or I can go all in, and if I lose, I don't take a price at all, or if I win, I just take, you know, like the jackpot. So yes, sometimes it's not that easy, but anyway, the decision should come very quickly. The longer you think of it, the probability that you would go wrong definitely increases. Yeah, short term or long term, but well, depends of what you need in that moment. Anyway, no matter what you decide, you should not think of it too much. Just make the decision as quickly as you can. Also, that's actually there comes another strategy, you know, that when a stronger player is in a bad position, he offers a draw, but then he realizes that the opponent won't take it. But he does it just to make the opponent think for more and lose some time. And well, I could never do that because, well, it's just embarrassing for me to offer a draw when I know that my position is lost. Well, if I'm just a little worse, or if I'm a little worse, it's not like I'm gonna offer a draw if I'm the better player, because I think that maybe I can still have a chance. But well, maybe that's something I should work on. The ability to offer a draw in a lost position. Who knows? But it feels like tricking the opponent. Anyway, yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, it really hurts when you force something and then sometimes you even end up losing. I remember I had this game last year in summer when I played the Serbian League and I was having a great tournament. On the first board I was like on +3 or +4 with quite strong opponents, and on one day I was playing against quite an old lady. I think she was like 64 years old and rated like 2200, but well, it was difficult for her to keep the pressure for so many hours, and she was on the last place. And I thought, okay, now today I just play a long game and then I win. And actually the strategy was working quite well until some point when I sacrificed something. And well, I left myself with 1 minute on the clock, I think. And I calculated very well everything that my sacrifice is working. And then my opponent played a move, one which I calculated before and I knew it's not good. and she offered me a draw. And in that moment, I forgot about all the variations I calculated. I looked at my clock, I saw that I'm already on 40 seconds, and in those remaining seconds, I did not have time to calculate again the winning variation. And instead I made a safe move, and the position was already drawn. But of course I felt so angry on me and on my opponent that finally I tried too hard, and I even lost that game. So it was, I couldn't have gotten a better lesson out of this game, that no matter of your opponent, how old he or she is, how bad he plays in that particular tournament, you should always be objective. And when it's a draw, because, it can happen anytime that the opponent, even which is lower rated than you, can make a good game. And if it is so, then it's just a draw. But when you push too hard and then you lose, and I remember that even my team lost the match because of it, and the draw would have been enough. So I learned the lesson, unfortunately, in the hard way. But I hope you guys will learn from my mistakes. Yeah. Well, all right. Thank you very much for joining tonight's Friday with Irina show. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something new for yourself. And if you liked the stream and would like to support it, then don't hesitate to make donations. And that being said, see you on Sunday at 2 p.m. Central European Time, when I will be playing a Romanian online Blitz chess tournament on Lichess. If you are interested to participate, I can also share the link with you, because the tournament has prizes. So I don't remember exactly, they are not very high, but all the top Romanian grandmasters are guaranteed to be playing. So it might be an interesting opportunity for everyone to play against strong opponents. So, all right, I will be leaving the link in the chat. Just give me a moment. And yeah, see you on Sunday, and have a nice weekend until that. Bye bye, everyone.